Okay, here's an event that I would like to schedule. This would be along the beaches of Santa Barbara, California. Um, it would be a remake of the. Okay, first of all, this is what's going to be involved. It's going to be a remake of the movie Popcorn, a new version of the movie Popcorn, starring in the role that was originally played by Jill Schoen. This would be taken over by Billie Eilish. She would play the role of the character that Jill Schoen plays. And I would be starring opposite Billie Eilish. Jill Schoen would maybe direct it or something, and Katy Perry would she would write a whole new album of songs inspired by the original Popcorn. Now, just to give you an idea for what the original Popcorn, what the movie is, kind of the basic premise of the movie. It's about this. Okay, it centers around this. First of all, it starts out with Jill Schoen. She's trying to write. She's writing a screenplay, and she's part of a theater group that at the I think it's the University of California, and they work on these avant-garde movies and everything. And she's at this meeting with her theater group. They're talking about how sadly they're running out of funding for the theater, so it's being threatened to be closed down. But they have this idea to raise the funds by putting on this horror fest, like a horror-thon of horror movies. It's horror movies from the 50s and 60s, sci-fi and horror. And what they do is, like, in the audience, while the people are watching these horror movies, they're actually kind of recreating some of the things that you see on screen. Are kind of like replicated in the audience too. So it kind of gives you kind of like this extra kind of thrill of seeing some of the things visually, face to face, some of the things that you're seeing on screen in the movies you're seeing up close. So anyways, but so it's about this. But kind of like a side plot to the movie is the guy who plays who stars opposite Jill Schoen in the original movie. I think his name is Tom Villard. He comes back because originally he wanted to stage a play where he murders his family on stage. And so he does. I mean, he does, like, so it's kind of like the ultimate performance. He murders his family on stage, and somehow he burns down the theater and everything. And his whole family dies in a tragic fire that he started intentionally, and he survives it, and so does Jill Schoen. Okay, and he loses like most of the flesh on his body. So what he does is he makes these masks out of human flesh to wear on his face, like a flesh mask, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where he wears like a mask made out of human flesh, because all the flesh on his face was burnt off in the fire. So, anywho, so he comes back, and during when they're trying to when they're doing this like theater production to try to raise the funds to try to save the theater, he comes back and he's like wearing all these different flesh masks made out of human flesh, and he's like, he's able to deceive them by making them think that he's like all these different people, like the guy that's like the teacher of like the theater group, played by Tony Roberts. And he's got a mask made. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily made out of. No, it's not necessarily. How does he get? He duplicates somehow like the flesh of like some other person's face, and he turns it into like a mask. I don't know. Is a mask? Does anybody know if his mask is made out of human flesh, or if it's some kind of like rubberized type of material? Does anybody know that? I don't know. I'd be interested to know. But anyways, But so, anyways, so he comes back and he's so during the horror-thon when they're having this horror fest, he comes back and he starts terrorizing everything, and then Jill Schoelen kind of catches on. See, this is such a difficult plot to explain because it is just so like convoluted, and it'll have your head spinning. It's such a it's a very abstract kind of dream sequence type of bizarro avant-garde type of plot that it's almost in its own way surreal, and it's kind of like, but it just functions still as somehow it functions as a coherent narrative. But anyways, so he comes back and he tries to he wants to finish, because he's bitter, so he wants to finish the production that he originally started by killing the rest of the people in his family. And then so anyways, so that's a general, that should give you a general idea for the plot of the movie. Okay. So let me give you, this was kind of like the slogan. It's on the movie poster that I have. The possessor, 15 years ago, he murdered his family on stage and burned down the theater. Tonight, he's back for an encore. Popcorn. Buy a bag. Go home in a box. So that was kind of like the promotional slogan, or whatever you want to call it. But so that would be, so the premiere that it would be shown. This is what I'm trying to get produced. If I can actually manage to contact either Katy Perry or Billie Eilish or Jill Schoelen, get this produced. It would take place on Santa Barbara, on the beaches of Santa Barbara, and the movie would be. I think people would really love the movie, and before the premiere of the movie, actually, Katy Perry would put on a concert featuring the new songs that she wrote that were inspired by the original movie Popcorn. Okay, and then we after that then right into the movie, and I was hoping to get that going for this Halloween, but maybe next Halloween, 2022. And then so it'd be kind of like my Lollapalooza. It'd be like Micah Palooza on the beaches of Santa Barbara, California. And on an adjacent stage, I would be giving a talk on Grey's Anatomy. I'd be, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to write myself as a character into the script for Grey's Anatomy. Okay. I want to be like a new character on the television show Grey's Anatomy. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to gain as much insight, knowledge, and medicinal acumen that a real doctor would have, even without being officially certified as a doctor. But if I had all the skills that a real doctor had, then I think that would be an impressive type of like resume that I can present to the people that produce Grey's Anatomy. They can say, well, this guy is like, okay, maybe he's not a real doctor, but he's just as smart as a real doctor, and he's just as insightful, and he could be a real doctor. He educated himself to the point of having all the skills, knowledge, insight, and whatever it takes to be a real doctor. And he did it in like 2 years or something like that. So why don't we let's give him a script. He could write, and also he's a good writer, so he could write a new character into the script for Grey's Anatomy. So that would be a presentation that I would be giving on the stage, next to the stage where the premiere of the new version of Popcorn would take place, and also where the Katy Perry would be putting on a concert of songs inspired by the original Popcorn. And so in the audience of where I'm giving the speech of Grey's Anatomy, like all the producers and all the actors and all the people that are anyway involved in Grey's Anatomy, even friends and relatives, would be in that audience to watch that. And that would almost be like my giving that performance would almost like not only be like part of the Micah Palooza, but it would be like kind of like my application. They're like almost like function as a job application to try to get, the job as not only a head writer for Grey's Anatomy, but also an actor. And I'd write my own part. Anyways, so it'd be like my Lollapalooza. Micapalooza. You get it? Lollapalooza, Micapalooza? I get it. Lollapalooza, Micapalooza. I think that's beautiful. Okay, so now here at this point, at this juncture, I would like to get out my Grey's Anatomy book and give this evening's lecture, this evening's lessons on lecturing Grey's Anatomy. Okay. Okay. Grey's Anatomy. I'm going to start with the head. Okay. The size of the brain was formerly said to bear a general relation to the intellectual capacity of the individual. Cuvier's brain weighed rather more than 64 ounces. That of the late Dr. Abercrombie, 63 ounces, and that of Dupuytren, 62 and a half ounces. On the other hand, the brain of an idiot seldom weighs more than 23 ounces. But these facts are by no means conclusive. And it is well known that these weights have been equaled by the brains of persons who never displayed any remarkable intellect. Dr. Heldenen of Cincinnati has recorded the case of a mulatto. Age 45 was Dr. Ensner, district medical officer at Port Elizabeth, reports that the brain of Carey, the Irish informer, weighed 61 ounces. M. Nicofra, according to him, the weight of the brain has no influence whatever on the mental faculties. It ought to be remembered that the significance of the weight of the individual. It is equally important to know what was the cause of death. For long illness or old age exhausts the brain. To define the real degree of development of the brain, it is therefore necessary to have a knowledge of the condition of the whole body, and this is usually lacking. The mere record of the weight possesses little significance. The human brain is heavier than all of the lower animals, excepting the elephant and whale. The brain of the former weighs from 8 to 10 pounds, and the whale, in a specimen 75 feet long, weighed rather more than 5 pounds. Cerebral localization and topography. Physiological and pathological research now gone far to prove that the surface of the brain may be mapped out into a series of definite areas, each one of which is intimately connected with some well-defined function. And this is especially true with regard to the convolutions on either side of the fissure of Rolando, which are believed by most physiologists of the present day to be concerned in motion. Those grouped around the fissure being associated with movements of the extremities of the opposite side of the body, and around the lower end of the fissure being related to the movements of the mouth and tongue. So when I perform cunnilingus, those are the muscles I use. Oh, okay. This is not the place nor space can be given to describe these localities. But the two accompanying cuts from Ferrier have been introduced and serve to indicate the position of the more important areas. The relation of the principal fissures of convolutions of the cerebrum to the outer surface of the scalp has been the subject of much investigation. And many systems have been devised by which one may localize these parts from an examination of the external surface of the head. These plans can only be regarded as approximately correct for several reasons. In the first place, because the relations of the convolutions of the sulci to the surface are found to be very variable in different individuals. Secondly, because the surface area of the scalp is greater than the surface area of the brain, so that lines drawn on one cannot correspond exactly to sulci of the convolutions of the other. And thirdly, because the sulci and convolutions in two individuals are never precisely alike. Nevertheless, the principal fissures and convolutions can be mapped out with sufficient accuracy for all practical purposes, so that any particular convolution can be generally exposed by removing with a trephine a certain portion of the skull's area. The various landmarks on the outside of the skull, which can be easily felt and which serve as indications of the position of the parts beneath, have already been referred to, and the relation of the fissures and convolutions of those landmarks is as follows. Longitudinal fissure. This corresponds to a line drawn from the glabella to the root of the nose to the external occipital protuberance. The fissure of Sylvius. The fissure of Sylvius at its horizontal limb is marked by a line starting from a point 1 inch and a quarter horizontally behind the external angular process of the frontal bone to a point 3/4 of an inch below the most prominent point of the parietal eminence. The first 3/4 of an inch will represent the main fissure, the remainder, the horizontal limb. The bifurcation of the fissure is therefore 2 inches behind and about 1/4 of an inch above the head of the external angular process. The ascending limb of the fissure passes upward and from this point parallel to and immediately behind the coronal suture. Fissure of Rolando. To find the upper end of the fissure of Rolando, a measurement should be taken from the glabella to the external occipital protuberance. The position of the top of the sulcus will be, measuring from in front, 55.6% of the whole distance from the middle part of the vertex. This is not quite so accurate as the former method, but it is sufficiently so for all practical purposes, and on account of its simplicity, is very generally adopted. From this point, the fissure runs downward and forward for 3 3/4 inches, its axis making an angle of 67 inches with the middle line. Cunningham states that this angle more nearly averages 71.5 degrees. In order to mark this groove, 2 strips of metal may be employed, one, the shorter, being fixed in the middle of the other at the angle mentioned. If the longer strip is now placed along the sagittal suture so that the junction of the 2 strips is over the point corresponding to the top of the furrow, the shorter oblique strip will indicate the direction, and 3 3/4 inches will mark the length of the furrow. Dr. Wilson has devised an instrument called an acrometer, certometer, which combines a scale of measurements for localizing the fissure of the daily. Okay, so that was a little bit of the brain. Should I cover some more of this stuff? Okay, now I'm going to go to special types of gray matter. In the cuneus and the calcareous fissure of the occipital lobe, Kajala has recently described as many as 9 layers. Here, the inner band of bilarger is absent. The outer band of bilarger, band of Gennari, is on the other hand of considerable thickness. If a section be examined microscopically, an additional layer is seen to be interpolated between the molecular layer and the layer of small pyramidal cells. The extra layer consists of 2 or 3 strata of fusiform cells, the long axes of which are at right angles to the surface. Each cell gives off 2 dendrites, external and internal, from the latter of which the axon arises and passes into the white central substance. In the layer of small pyramidal cells, fusiform cells identical with the above are seen, as well as ovoid or star-like cells with ascending axons. Cells of Martinati. This area of the cortex forms a visual center, and it has been shown by Dr. J.S. Bolton that in old standing cases of optic atrophy, the thickness of Gennari's band is reduced by nearly 50%, whatever. In the hippocampus major, the molecular layer is very thick and contains a large number of Golgi cells. It has been divided into 3 strata: convolutum or granulosum, containing many tangential fibers; lacunosum, presenting numerous lymphatic or vascular spaces; radiatum, exhibiting a rich plexus of fibrils. The 2 layers of pyramidal cells are condensed into one, and the cells are mostly of large size. The axons of the cells of the polymorphous layer may run in an ascending, descending, or horizontal direction. Between the polymorphous layer and the ventricular ependyma is the white substance of the alveolus. In the rudimentary dentate, convolution of the molecular layer contains more pyramidal cells, while the layer of pyramidal cells is almost entirely represented by small ovoid cells. The olfactory bulb. In many of the lower animals, this contains a cavity which communicates through the hollow olfactory stalk with the cavity of the lateral ventricle. In man, the original cavity is filled up by neuroglia, and its wall becomes thickened, but much more so on the ventral than on the dorsal aspect. Its dorsal part contains a small amount of gray and white matter, but is scanty and ill-defined. A section through the ventral part shows it consists of the following layers from without inward. A layer of olfactory nerve fibers, which are the non-medullated axons prolonged from the olfactory cells of the nose, and which reach the bulb by passing through the cribriform plate of ethmoid bone. At first they cover the bulb and then penetrate to the end by forming synapses, with the dendrons of the mitral cells presently to be described. Glomerular layer. This contains numerous spheroidal reticulated enlargements termed glomeruli, which are produced by the branching and aberration of the processes of the olfactory nerve fibers with a descending dendrite of the mitral cells. Molecular layer. This is formed of a matrix of neuroglia, embedded in which are the mitral cells. These cells are pyramidal in shape, and the basal part of each gives off the thick dendron, which ascends in the glomerular layer, where it arborizes and is indicated above, and others which interfere with similar dendrites of the neighboring mitral cells. The axons pass through the next layer into the white matter of the bulb, from which, after becoming bent on themselves at a right angle, they are continued into the olfactory tract, nerve fiber layer. This lies next to the central core of the neuroglia, and its fibers consist of the axons of afferent processes of the mitral cells, which are passing to the brain. Some afferent fibers, however, also present and ferminate in the molecular layer, but nothing is known as to their exact origin.